Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about the soaps, because if you're a soap fan, there's some pretty big news heading your way. Before we start, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the support on the more recent videos, the ones that are more documentary inclined, I suppose. So we did one about the famous BBC Two close down featuring the King's Singers. We've talked about Martyn Lambie-Nairn and his team's revolutionary design for the BBC, and also the most recent ITV's journey through colour television, which took longer than you may have thought. So if you haven't checked those out, please do. I know a lot of you have been enjoying them. More of them will be coming. But you know, occasionally when some big stuff happens, I'm going to be here in front of the camera to talk to you about it. Specifically the fact that soaps, specifically Corrie and Emmerdale, you're going to get your fix from 7 a.m. This is a pretty big shift because Coronation Street and Emmerdale have been long-standing bastions on ITV. I believe Emmerdale's been running since 1972, recently had its 50th anniversary. Coronation Street has been running since 1960, fast approaching 65 years on the air, which is insane. Definitely the longest running soap in the world. So this article comes from ITVX directly itself. It says, from Monday the 14th of October, the latest episodes of Coronation Street and Emmerdale will be live on ITVX from 7 a.m. each morning, ahead of their broadcast on ITV1 that evening, as part of ITV's strategy to offer our viewers ultimate choice in how they watch our programmes. The new 7 a.m. soap drop coincides with the launch of a new soap destination on ITVX, with a treasure trove of content sitting alongside all the latest episodes, now made available ahead of their ITV1 transmission. Now, I'm sure for those of you who are fans of these soaps, this is a pretty big deal. Not necessarily revolutionary. I think other broadcasters have been doing this for a while. I think even ITV has been doing this for a while with other programmes. Don't the BBC do this with EastEnders now, where they put it on the iPlayer first before it goes out on transmission? And just with its dramas, it did this with Doctor Who recently, where the episodes would go out at midnight before going out on BBC One later that same day. These sort of moves, people either love them or hate them. Yes, it does give you that freedom of choice. Some people prefer to sit down at a specific broadcast time, but I think that viewpoint is increasingly steering into the minority now. I think as generations, as newer generations come around, I think less and less people want a very set time. They want that freedom to tune in as and when they like. So it comes as no great surprise on that part. The new soap page on ITVX will include dedicated rails for classic Coronation Street and classic Emmerdale, as well as a rail of greatest episodes and a Stars of the Soap collection too, with dramas like Tina and Bobby starring Michelle Keegan, Maryland starring Saran Jones, and The Long Shadow starring Catherine Kelly, and more besides. The top picks rail in the soap's destination page will also include Nolly, the biopic by Russell T Davies on the soap opera queen Noelle Gordon, starring Helena Bonham Carter as the star of ITV's iconic daytime soap Crossroads. Viewers can stream memorable episodes of Crossroads too. Look out for your favourite soap stars introducing classic episodes and picking their ITVX favourites. Wow, okay, a lot to unpack here. So not only are the soaps going to be airing at this earlier time of 7 a.m, giving viewers more choice, but it seems like ITV is also going to be delving more into its back catalogue as well, which I think in the long run can only be a good thing. I think more broadcasters need to actively engage in putting their back catalogue out there, never as a replacement for new original or continuing new episodes of programs, but I think to honour both the history and allow new generations to discover that history as well. So a bunch of classic episodes, greatest hits for both Corrie and Emmerdale, I think that can only be a good thing. They have thousands upon thousands of episodes to choose from, so as to what they're actually going to go for and put out there, I don't know, but I'm expecting you're going to see some stuff from across the decades. Nolly as well, that biopic, I did watch that when it came out and I quite enjoyed it. I never watched Crossroads, I wasn't alive when it was on and I haven't gone back to watch it, but it seemed like it had that really cozy place in people's life. It was never sort of the A-list, the top of the bill sort of program, but it captivated a lot of people at the time and it still has a lot of fond memories associated with it. So having some classic episodes there I think is a good idea as well. The move follows soap viewing growing significantly on ITVX in 2024, with both Emmerdale and Coronation Street up around 30%. Both Coronation Street and Emmerdale are in the top 5 shows for streaming hours on ITVX, and combined they have brought in nearly 300 million streams. This year alone, that is certainly a big figure. And you can sort of see why they're in the top 5 constantly for streaming numbers. They are arguably two of the biggest programs on ITV, both in their history and currently. They both have very loyal fan bases that have either been watching for decades, or even if they've only recently started watching, they cultivate this loyal fan base that keeps going back to these soap operas. Now, I've said before, soap operas have never really been my jam as an audience member. I've never really been able to get into them at any point in my life thus far. And I think the way TV's going and, the more streaming model, etc., the market for soaps, I think, is gradually closing, at least soaps that were done in the traditional sense, like Corrie, like Emmerdale, like EastEnders. I'll touch more about that in a second and whether this move to, 7am drops is going to benefit that. But let's continue on with the article. Craig Morris, who's the managing editor of ITV Channels and ITVX, said, "The positive response when we made the soaps available at 7am during the Euros and the Olympics this year shows that audiences want to choose when to watch their favourite soap. And the new dedicated destination on ITVX is a fitting home for the nation's biggest and best continuing dramas. Now you can choose when to enjoy your daily dose of drama, whether during the morning commute, over lunch, or at a time that suits you each evening." So, very interesting, and also, I guess, very clever how they've used those big sporting events, because sporting events disrupt the schedules immensely, more so the Olympics, because if you want to do rolling coverage, you're going to have to dedicate a lot of the schedule to that, particularly if it's in a favourable time zone, as it was this year over in Paris. So using that to test the waters for a 7am drop is definitely the right move, and, they've got the success from it, and like they say, they're getting to choose when to watch it. Now, some people, if they missed the scheduled broadcast, they would catch up. They'd watch it over breakfast the next morning, or at lunch, as they say, or a different evening. Maybe they'd do a double bill. I guess this is giving you that early freedom of choice. But again, some people, pros and cons to each side. Some people would argue that, a soap dropping at 7am like Corrie or Emmerdale could unleash spoilers for those who maybe can't watch it until it's broadcast that evening. Because if they're dropping at 7am, Emmerdale's on at 7:30, Corrie's on at 8. Now, in terms of demographics, I'd argue the audiences for both Corrie and Emmerdale probably skew older. Not saying young people don't watch it, I'm sure they do, but I think, let's face it, I think a lot of the fan bases for these programs are those people who have stuck with it for decades, so the likelihood of them being spoiled, is it less? Well, a lot of older people do use things like Facebook, and they're all part of groups of things they enjoy. I'm sure a lot of them are part of, a Corrie group or an Emmerdale group. So that 11-12 hour gap between dropping on ITVX and actually being broadcast on ITV1, that could unleash spoiler problems for people. I know as a Whovian, we've had a similar thing in the Doctor Who fandom again, as it dropped at midnight and we were waiting lots of time before the broadcast later that day. Spoilers were going to be rife all over the social medias, so you either had to watch at midnight or you had to choose to stay away from it, and not everyone can stay up that late. You could argue this is a bit more favourable dropping at 7am, you're not having to stay up till midnight, you can watch it over your breakfast, etc., but that potential for spoilers is still very much there. There's a little bit about what's going on in the programmes at the minute. So for Emmerdale, apparently they're marking 30 years of the Dingles, and it sees the soap's largest family devastated to learn that their patriarch Zach has passed away. Sad day for the family and the village at large, but despite the tragedy, the Dingle family are doing what they do best. They're pulling together. Heartbroken, Kane, Sam and Belle reminisce about their dear father, and the villagers pay tribute to him. So, obviously, big things going on there. And in Corrie, things take a sinister twist as DS Lisa Swain, DC Kit Green and PC Craig Tinker continue to investigate the whereabouts of Joel Deering. A body has been found in the canal. Could Joel have met a grisly end? Dee Dee and Lauren are left reeling from the news that he's been murdered. But what more are the police about to discover? Dun dun dun! And I mean, about all these soaps, are they sensational? Yes, you could argue that has been a key selling point of soap operas for decades now. Maybe back in the day when they first began in the 60s and 70s, the roots were a lot more humble. There were less sensational things going on, like, someone wasn't being murdered every week or airplanes weren't crashing every week, that sort of stuff. But, the sensational aspect, if you like, is certainly a key draw for people who like going back to these things. They like those big moments when a storyline cultivates. You can look at EastEnders in the last year with the whole Six drama. That certainly gained a lot of traction. Ian McLeod, the executive producer for continuing drama at ITV, said this is great news for soap fans. Having the ability to catch your favourite show at a time that suits you fits perfectly with people's busy days and flexible lives. And who doesn't love the idea of watching the latest Dingle drama in the Dales, or Calamity on the cobbles, on the tram to work, or over a brew after dropping the kids at school? As a soap nerd, I should also say that the new soap page is an absolute treat. It's a one-stop shop for fans of Coronation Street and Emmerdale, and it will now be so easy to enjoy your favourite shows and delve into their illustrious histories and beyond. This idea of having a dedicated soap page where you can not only watch the new stuff but watch the classic stuff as well, great idea. As I said, any broadcaster that's sort of, exploiting its archive, if you will, is a great idea. But this move, is it ultimately going to be a good thing? And what does it say about soap operas in general? The point I made earlier about soap operas, that window for them closing in the current environment, because let's be real, the soap operas, particularly Corrie and Emmerdale, you know, things that were made in the 60s and 70s, that was made at a time with no internet, there was no catch-up service, things barely, if ever, got repeated. If you missed that broadcast, like if you missed Corrie back in the day at 7 o'clock or whenever it was on, you missed it, and you'd have to probably hear about it from a friend or in the papers or such like. But that was part of the appeal. The reason why these soaps got tens of millions of viewers, it wasn't just because there was limited channel choice. That definitely played a factor. But you could argue it was also because of this, you know, serialized format. It was push. You had to watch it, otherwise you were going to miss it. Now, as things like, you know, VHS came in, and then the advent of the internet and video on demand, that audience gradually dwindled. And I think the format of soaps is just less viable nowadays. You know, it's very rare, if ever happens here in Britain anyway, that you'd see a company commission a brand new soap to run as continuously as, like, you know, EastEnders and all them do. I think the last one you could argue, well, mate, I was going to say Hollyoaks, maybe it was Doctors in 2000, but do you know what I mean? That serialized format is very rare and very unlikely to happen now as it is. And these shows, you know, part of the reason why they've gone on for 50, 60 years is, of course, the brand name. They have gone on for so long. They've got audiences for life, people who have been baked in from a young age and want to catch up with what's going on. I think this model definitely helps their viability in the short term. You know, dropping them early for those who want to watch them early at 7 a.m., that's great. I do think a large chunk of these soap audiences, though, are going to continue to watch them at their traditional times of 7:30 and 8 p.m. respectively, because that is the tradition. That's what they look forward to. They like coming home after work, having their tea, and watching the latest episode of Corrie or Emmerdale. And I don't think that's going to change for some people. I do think some people are going to love it. Some people are going to say, the freedom of choice I have now is great. Thank you, ITV, for doing this. I can watch on ITVX at my leisure. And like I say, from a practical point, I do think this helps the soaps in the short term just to stick around a bit, gives them that sort of modern viability in the streaming era. Ultimately, you know, as people move away from scheduled broadcasts entirely into that freedom of choice, it does make you wonder a future where schedules are done away with and, you know, you just have Corrie dropping at 7 a.m. every single time. It could realistically be a possibility. I don't know when, but it's something to look at in the near future. Now, if you're watching this video on the night I'm dropping it, then this change hasn't happened yet. You won't see it on the website. If you're watching it from Monday the 14th of October onwards, go on ITVX, have a look, because there's going to be this soap page. You'll be able to watch the new episodes of Corrie and Emmerdale. You'll be able to watch the classics. It's all going to be there for you, and I'd be very curious to hear what you think of the page, what you think of this whole new idea. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, because, as I say, I find it interesting to read, and I'd just love to know your thoughts. But that is all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please remember to leave a like on it. It really does help us out. And subscribe to the channel as well, because we'd love to have you aboard. In the meantime, I've been Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show. And a special thank you to Macra, Bruce Danton, Derek Chambers, Shaun Knock, Daud Khan, Liam De-Maine, Ajmac 200017, Deck, Evan Hart 41, Jen, Traffi, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Ted Elliott, Marnanel Thurman, John Wakefield, Kieran Bolton, 40-something Manchild, Jerry Ralph, and John McLeod, our AMTV staff members.